folks, so this video has been a while in the making. Trying to find time to edit him is a nightmare, but I did this as soon as I got hold of the model and I recorded myself doing it, and I finally got around to editing it, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is converting the Calsius model from issue number 4 of the Conquest magazine. Is that the one? I think it was. No, issue number 5, wasn't it? Anyway, so converting the Calsius into something that's not an Ultramarine model. Yeah, so hopefully you'll enjoy this one. Don't forget to like it if you do, and let's just get cracking on with it. Alright, come on. Alrighty then, so this is what this video is all about, is getting rid of Ultramarine symbols. We've got some on the backpack, we've got some on the purity seals, we've got some on the, we got 1, 2, and 3 Ultramarines on the sword, one on the shoulder pad, one on the knee. It's very much an Ultramarine model, and so what we want to do is we want to turn this one into a not Ultramarine model. So I'm going to build this up and then come back with the first stage of converting him. Okay, so there he is, all built. Alright, so as you can see, most of it's on here. We've got that all together. So we need to get rid of the, like I said, the ones on the sword and the knee pad. We can scrape those off, and we'll go around and we can scrape off the U on the backpack as well. As you can see, there's a shoulder pad missing, and that's because we can change that altogether. Alright, and we just need to take that nub off that we saw, as you can see here. So these are the bits I've got left. Now I've left the purity seals off. I'll just replace those, which are there and there, where the you know, even those have Ultramarine symbols on. And so what I'm going to do is I'll have a look through my bits box, and we'll see if I can try and find myself some Blood Angel-y type shoulder pads, because that's who he's going to be. He's going to be a Blood Angels. This one's from an aggressor. The first one was from a tactical marine. But I'll have a look through those eventually, and I'll find what I want to use. And what I also have is an extra bits box with all the I keep all the purity seals and stuff on the sprues. You know, you find lots of these little bits and pieces all over the sprues. Sometimes you don't want to use them, it takes too long to add them, but that's what they're for. So that's what I'm going to do, and we will see how we get on with those. And you can see I've added a few extra bits already, the purity seals and the logo, no, the little thing at the top there, and I found a shoulder pad as well. I didn't show you gluing those on because essentially that's all it was just a case of gluing them on. But what we're going to do now is I'm just going to take that little nub off of the shoulder pad, or off the shoulder. That's where it would fit on the sprue of this model. The shoulder pad that does belong there has got a little hole where that nub goes in, but I just need to clip it off with my clippers and then bring my knife in and just give it a nice scrape down, just to keep it nice and smooth, and essentially turn it into any regular shoulder. And when I'm converting, I do like using plastic glue. Simple reason is super glue is great for when you're putting a model together how it should be, but sometimes when you're converting, you are changing the way it's designed, so you might not get as good a contact as you would normally like. Whereas with plastic glue, it doesn't matter what kind of contact you've got, you're melting the plastic together and fusing it together. Alright, that's why I like to use plastic glue. And there we go, that's the shoulder pad. We've got some of the purity seals on already, and now it's just a case of scraping off the U's to turn him into something less Ultramarine-y. Alright, so what we're going to do is, first things first, we're going to take off the one on the knee. Alright, so what we're going to need is we're going to need the knife and we're going to need the clippers, and also one of these little needle files. Doesn't really matter what shape as long as you're careful. Alright, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick it up, and we're just going to ever so gently, being careful not to ruin anything of the knee itself. You're literally just ever so gently just clipping off some of those the higher details, taking off some of the bulk of the material. Do this very gently. You don't want to start taking chunks out the knee. Alright, so we'll get on with doing that. And then the next step is to use the needle file to kind of start taking away the rest of the material that is extra on top of the knee pad. Now this is a bit rough. You gotta be careful. You can see I'm doing very small circular movements here, just trying to grind down the material that's sitting proud of the knee. Now I'm no expert at doing this. I'm kind of making this up as I go along. I'm just using the file to get rid of, to take bites out of the material, to remove it quickly. And then once I'm kind of happy that I've got down to just knee material, I'm going to come in with my knife and essentially just try and attempt to just smooth it down. Okay, you might be able to use an emery board, a little bit of sandpaper to help with this, but I didn't have any to hand. And so yeah, we're just gonna smooth this down now. We're taking the clippers to take the file to remove chunks of the material, not out of the knee, of course. We just want to take chunks out of the U, and then the knife comes in to attempt to smoothen it off. All right. So the next stage is to do one at the back on this backpack here. This time it's not quite as big, I don't think. It doesn't stand out quite so far. So this time I just came in straight in with the knife. Now be careful. Obviously you can see I'm kind of cutting towards my thumb. Yeah, if I slipped, the knife would have dug into my thumb there. So I do try and remember to cut away from myself. But essentially I'm trying to kind of treat this one as a large mold line. So I'm just trying to very carefully cutting away just the higher material. It's slow going. You don't want to rush this if you want to do a good job, because if you rush it, then it's going to stand out that you haven't done what you set out to do. An alternative to this would be use a different backpack, but I haven't got one handy. So, and when the knife doesn't necessarily do a complete job, I come in with the file again ever so carefully, because trying to get the right angle on this thing. But as long as you're careful, nice and smooth. You don't want to keep hacking away at this thing. But if you're nice and careful, you should be able to get in there and get a reasonably flat job. Alright? And when I think the file's done a good enough job, then I'll come back with the knife again. Essentially it's the same principle. You take off the big chunks of the material, you file it down, and then come back in and clean up. Only this time, instead of using the clippers to take the big chunks out, I use the knife. Alright? And so then we just smooth it off. And it is pretty simple. Just take your time. And once the backpack is done, then we can move on to other parts of the model. For starters, I'm going to start with this U at the bottom, and essentially, to be honest with you, this one's actually one of the simplest ones. It's just a case of flattening it down. The U, the Ultramarine logo stands proud of the moulding of the tip of the scabbard here. Yet when you flatten that completely down, it no longer becomes a proud Ultramarine logo, and then just becomes the shape of the scabbard tip. You know, the U disappears, because there won't be any shading on that point. But don't forget the other side of this, of course, because there is one on either side, and also along the sides. You just want to flatten that down. But because it's so small, you can get the knife in there and do it with the knife. But once that disappears, it just becomes, you know, a metal tip to the scabbard with a dent at the, you know, in the middle. Dent with a, you know, with a bit missing. Yeah, so that's actually one of the easiest ones in the model to do. And it's just a case of cleaning it off and just be careful with it. And there we go. Yeah, it's cleaned off, and now it becomes just part of the tip. So what we need to do now is we need to sort something out about this. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this sword. Okay, we have a U here, and we're going to cut at the top of that U, and here we're going to cut right next to his hand. And this is why I glue it together, because this is, you know, I need to get the measurements right, and the best way to do it is actually have it glued together, because then the movements aren't going to change too much. So ever so carefully, we're just going to cut the sword at his hand, and then ever so gently, I'm using the clippers the same way you would cut off the sprue, and I'm going to cut right at the top of that U. And now we have a gap where we want a sword to fit. Okay, but first things first, we smooth off the areas. I'm using the needle file again. I just want to make sure it's nice and flat on either side, and then I want to get rid of the U there. And so this is pretty much the same as what we did earlier. It's just, we just need to be really careful with it. We're just scraping that off. It's quite difficult, this bit, and you could possibly try and do the same, go further down, closer to the hand when you're cutting. It is difficult to get this one done. I'm not really sure I've even done a particularly good job of getting rid of it, but yeah, it's close enough. Alright, and then what we need to do is we need to get our own sword, and this is the sword I'm going to use. It's got some lovely wings on it and a blood drop, which is perfect. And essentially all we're going to do is we're going to cut this to fit. Now it doesn't matter that it's the wrong hand, because we're actually going to cut the hand off. I mean, that's the first bit we're going to do. We need to be very careful not to damage the hilt, of course, because we want that in good condition. So I'm just cutting enough to weaken the joint. Yeah, takes a couple of goes, but yeah, I'm going to cut it enough so that we can pull that apart without damaging the hilt at all. We can damage the hand, because we're just going to throw that away, because that's going to be no good anymore. But very, very carefully cutting this in. I'm even getting the knife in there because it's much thinner than the clippers, and just ever so gently work that free. I don't know if we're going to be, it doesn't come off completely damage free, but it's a miniature, so you know it's going to be very small, the damage. We just want to make sure that that's nice and flat as well, so we get a good connection with the hand that's currently still on the model. The next bit is a little bit more trickier, because what we need to do is we need to make sure that we cut the sword at the right place. Yeah, this needs to fit perfectly between one part of the model and the next. So I'm using the knife to kind of score where I need to cut. Yeah, so I've worked out how far it needs to be, and you know, and I used the model to tell me how big it is, and this is why I glued it together. So I measured the top part of the blade to see how far that needs to be, and then because the scabbard is not completely perpendicular, I'm just going to make sure that I measure the bottom of the blade as well, just to make sure that if the scabbard's at an angle to the blade, I can cut that angle into the blade as well, so that when the two parts marry up, they will fit. And you know, just keep double checking it. You know, once you start cutting plastic away, you can't really put it back on. So, you know, as most of the old adages go, you know, measure twice, cut once, and then we cut it off. And then, you know, you pass the point of no return. I do like picking up the file as well, just to make sure that that's nice and smooth. Just a couple of passes, you see that, just literally just once or twice over the file, you know, that's enough. You know, the plastic's soft enough, it's not going to be crazy. And then again, it's really important, or for me, it's really important to use plastic glue for this, because you know, super glue is great, but plastic glue is permanent, and it would help fill out any of those tiny gaps if that blade didn't get cut completely to the right angle. The plastic glue melting both sides will help fuse that together and fill any gaps, so you don't have to worry about green stuff. And then it's such a small piece, I'm using some tweezers here just to get that in there. And also the plastic glue, it gives you some time to get the angle right, get the, you know, twizzle it around a little bit. It's going to take some time for it to catch, but once you've got that in, just ever so gently putting that in, and then you've got a little bit of time still with, even with the plastic glue. With super glue, it'll grab and you can't move it around, whereas with the plastic glue, you can fiddle around with it and get it perfect. And other than that, that is how I converted an Ultramarine lieutenant from Conquest magazine into a Blood Angel lieutenant. Alright, so I'm going to fiddle around with this and then we'll finish this video off. Alright. There he is. That's it. And so what I've done after filming this, I went and primed him, and let's see if we can get the video to focus on him. There we go. Oh, let's bring him across to the center so you can see him. There we go. And you can see that after, you know, they're not perfect, that knee pad, it's not completely perfect, but hopefully we might be able to do it. You can see the sword there. The one where the blade meets the scabbard is not brilliant, but the other one at the tip there, that's almost vanished, and hopefully with some painting that will disappear. And we go around, you see the shoulder pad there, and come around to the backpack. If you stay in focus, you should be able to see that that one is it's gone. It's not in focus anymore. Come on. No, it's out of focus. Just as I was trying to show you it. Never mind. But that one's, again, it's not perfect, but it's fairly smooth. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. It's been a joy doing this. I'm getting into converting more and more, and trying to, you know, just push the boat out a little bit, you know, trying to get outside of the comfort zone of making the models exactly as they are. You know, these plastic models from Games Workshop, you know, certainly in recent years they seem to be monopose and unconvertible, but they look good. You know, the poses are great, and the idea behind this video was to kind of show you that, you know, you don't have to change the model. You know, it's not, you're not massively converting it, you're just changing a few bits and pieces. It's almost like a kit bash, where you're just adding a bit of a kit here and adding a bit of a kit from there, and then you're changing the model into something completely different. So, you know, hopefully you've enjoyed this one. If you do, don't forget to like it, and throw me down a comment as well. Let me know what you think. Would you have done the same thing? Have you done the same thing? Or do you think you would have done something a little bit different? Feel free, let's have we can have a chat about that. That's no problem. And while you're down there, you can have a look at all the links for my various social media, and if you want to help support the channel, you can find Patreon down there as well, but don't feel obliged to do so. You could do so at your leisure. And that just leaves me to say, don't forget, like, share and subscribe and all that jazz. Press the bell button so you don't miss any of my uploads. And I say thank you for watching this one. I'll catch you in the next one. Alright? Ta-ra.